Cozy.
This meeting will come to order. This is the Community Preservation Act Committee, and today is April 3rd, and it's approximately 6:45, and I'm not sure exactly what time it is at the moment, but that was our plan to start. Come on in, guys, and have a seat. And I was going to tell you that Marcos was going to join us, and also Steve Huntley from Valley Opportunity Council, and Marcos and they're going to talk to us about 123 Pine Street, and also the city solicitor, Crystal Barnes, is in the meeting next door, and she will be joining us too about talk to us about the template that she sent out. So yeah, let's. But you want to skip item 1 and go right to let them go ahead? Yeah. Okay. All in favor? Aye.
Yeah, Marcos Morrow and
Steve Huntley.
Steve.
Well, hello everyone. Thank you for having me again. I appreciate all the time you spent on me. I feel bad for taking so much of your time. But I do appreciate the effort to try to get one of these projects in the city. Last time we spoke, we kind of narrowed down to 123 Pine, the focus on funding. Part of that conversation was trying to identify whether there was a way in which the project could also be categorized under the community housing, we'll call it silo of the CPA funding, which would allow the city to allocate $50,000 that are not otherwise available in this round. I don't want to make representations on behalf of Amy, but we did discuss several times. And now I don't have to. Amy's here.
Yes.
I'll just go ahead.
I'll stand.
No, it's okay. We'll get another chair.
I'm happy to stand
Are
and
you sure?
positive. Yes.
I mean, I've been sitting for the last 2 hours, so I'm happy to stand. Go ahead. Honestly, I've been sitting for 2 hours.
I need to stand. I can do whatever you guys want. This is awkward because of that, right?
Yeah, that's not up to me.
You can take this one, pass it around.
You might make it like
And
that.
I'll grab
All day. It makes up for all my deficiencies. The jokes aren't in back there.
Yes, yes.
Is that not us? You're on the hot seat.
Yeah, he's getting the chairs.
Oh, you're sitting on the radiator?
Yeah, I was considering doing
This
like
is
a
like-
meadow standing on the
This
table.
is like becoming Thanksgiving in my dining room. Or else exactly how
Especially
this
my
feels
seat
like.
over here.
Just
You
like
should take some of
Thanksgiving.
this over sitting on the
Yeah.
Just put it under your rump.
I don't realize how
Yeah,
small
there,
these
seats
are.
for all.
Hey, Kip.
Hey.
Almost.
Sorry, There's plenty of space, Kip. Come on in.
We'll just have to.
What's this contraption for?
Does
it work?
Yes, we do too.
Okay.
Oh my goodness.
No, I can stay back here. Don't worry about it.
Seriously, is there any reason
If
we
we have
can't
enough
have a
for
sign
quorum,
on the
I
story?
can
Go back to work.
Okay.
Good to
Come on
see
in,
you.
guys.
Well,
See,
thank
you're
you.
sitting
We got a
down.
second left, so. No,
But I think we're. Roll.
Wherever you want to find a
Might speed
seat.
up the efficiency.
Israel,
chair.
sit down, sit down.
I'm not sure what's going on.
Oh, there's an extra seat there.
I'm just going to continue standing.
More than that, just stay.
And,
You could sit on the file cabinets.
okay, and Marcos, come back over here.
Alright, very good. It's kind of like that little game, you move the little squares around. No, not the Rubik's, the flat one that you have to line up 1 through 18 or whatever it was. Sit down, someone else is gonna pile in the door.
Okay, this meeting will come to order again, and Megan, you'll note the additions to our group here. And, okay, so we have a good quorum, and we had already allowed Marcos and Steve to speak, so they're here, so. Is that all right, Amy, or did you want to say something before they come?
No, that's fine.
No. Okay.
I was at the point where I was going to start talking about your conversation with Stuart Saginaw, so I would be more than happy to defer the limelight to Amy if she wants to add something at this point, and I'll keep talking afterwards, or I can keep
Can
talking
you fill
now.
me in on what you just shared? Then I know.
Okay, so all I was
We
doing was
just started.
We
recapping
missed nothing.
the last meeting, where We had the focus of all the 3 proposals that I had submitted on behalf of the Redevelopment Authority have been narrowed down to 123 Pine Street. And that part of the homework that we had taken with us was trying to see if we could amend or resubmit an application that would allow the CPC to consider $50,000 in funding that otherwise would not be available. And literally that's when everyone came in. So that's where I was. And I'm happy to defer the floor to you.
Why don't you share what you, the plan that you shared with me by email?
Absolutely. So in my hand, I have something that we just completed today, so that you will be getting it momentarily. I can put it here so you can go through it. So what we've done is we've basically amended the application that would comply, we believe, with the feedback that we've gotten from the state CPA organization in both the historic category and community housing. Just moments ago, we finished a redevelopment authority meeting that was called specifically for this purpose, where they considered a proposal for development at the 123 Pine Street site by Valley Opportunity Council, as I had shared with you at the last meeting. And so VOC has now been selected as the developer, and in the days ahead we will be putting ink to paper on the exact conditions of the development, and having a contract, a purchase and sale agreement. But it is everything that we have discussed before. It would be a low-income housing tax credit project that would leverage these funds in order to get those 4% tax credits. And Steve Huntley is here in case you have very specific questions on the layering of the financing. They would go in with the BOSIS project, and he'll be able to explain how that works and why it's actually a win-win, not just for the city, but actually for the BOSIS project itself. For the application itself, what we did is we took our estimates and we modified them based on the new information provided by the cost estimation from the VOC team. They estimate that the total development cost for the project will be closer to $1.6 million, where I think we have like 1.1 or 1.2. They estimate that the outside could be up to $400,000. I think we have it at around $317,000. Basically 20% of the project would be the envelope, all the historic nature of the building. The inside of the building, I don't know if any of you have had the great opportunity to walk it. It's pretty much gutted out. I mean, a lot of walls aren't even there. You have some of the framing, but almost nothing remains in the inside. So we've taken the approach that the cost of all the inside would be the building of the community housing, and that would be 80% of the project costs. So because it's 20%, 80%, how that fell, as we estimated what it would cost to do the outside versus the inside, we have apportioned the $150,000 to mirror that. So of the $150,000, we would be requesting 20% for historic preservation on all the outside measures, so that would be equal to $30,000, and we would request 80% to go with the 80% of the cost estimate for the inside for community housing, and that would be $120,000. Hopefully that now doesn't mess up everything else on the historic side. I didn't quite know, but we could always amend that, but I didn't quite know, like, is it going to be 50-50 or what? I thought it was just fair that if it's 2080 on our cost estimate, we would just do 2080 on the request.
So the whole project's 1.6?
Yes, that is the estimate.
And from us, Marco, how much is the amount you're requesting?
$150,000, which is equivalent to like 9.4% of the project.
So 150, at this stage of the ballgame, in other words, as of this funding cycle, as we speak, it's $150,000 you're requesting from us.
Correct. And we would not anticipate requesting any.
I do have a budget thing with this kind of worked in, so I can show you.
Taking any historical money doesn't mess up your plans for the exterior, because that, as I understand it, will trigger the requirements for the housing standards.
Right, the intent has been all along to follow the Department of Interior standards.
Okay, great.
Yeah, the only thing, I mean, I sort of thought you were gonna do two separate applications, but you kind of put them both into one, but I guess that's a little bit similar to what you did, Steve.
What we did for both
For
seats.
your, yeah, with the 50 for two different things, so, yeah. So I
I
guess
would assume that we could write the conditions and make it very clear which funding.
yeah, it might have to be two separate. I don't know if it would be one contract or two, but we can deal with that later.
How much did you say for the exterior?
30,000,
30,000.
which would be equal to 20% of the ask.
Okay. But I mean, that
Oh, the total cost
yeah,
is,
was 317.
our estimate right now is 317,000.
Oh, I did have that.
Where we
right, okay.
particularly were short on our estimate was on the roof, and looking back, it was kind of ridiculous what we put on.
So it wouldn't be prudent to just put the 150 towards the envelope, because that would be very simple for us and be able to go, I mean, I'm just suggesting, this is just a suggestion to.
Sure, and so that was the original proposal,
Well, maybe we don't have
150,000.
150 in
We don't.
historic. Okay, that's what, okay,
Right.
that's what it is.
That's
All
what-
right,
that's
I
what
knew
prompted the
something.
two steps,
Yes,
right.
yes, okay. Yeah.
So this is no longer at all like a developer incentive, right?
We don't have to call it that, we have a developer in hand.
Yeah.
The HRA is happy to be the intermediary on this. If the CPC desires to give the money directly to the developer, once they prove they've done it,
Do the
I
other
think
funds-
that's fine. We've leveraged site control to have a project, so.
Do the other funds have to be raised?
Yes, so I think it would be healthy for Steve to explain how the VOSIS project and this one interact and what the timing is and the mechanism for that is.
So to start from the beginning for VOCES, just briefly to catch you all up, we took over VOCES 3 years ago. It was managed, it was redeveloped by Carlos Vega 28 years ago. We did a capital needs assessment of the property. We found some deficiencies, some structural deficiencies. Not, oh my God, structural deficiencies, but stuff we don't want to have there for the long-term future. So we've come to terms that we needed a 4% tax credit application for it. So we started down the path this past November. The feedback was we needed a local resource and they wanted us to add some units. So the local resource was why we did the VOCES CPA application, which thank you all very much, by the way. And then the second was, as I was listening to Marcos talk about the Pine Street, 123 Pine Street, I loved that building. I just loved the building, but I didn't, we looked at it when the city was trying to sell it 5, 3, 10 years ago. I'm not sure exactly when it was. Probably right.
Almost times.
And I didn't like that it was just a lot. There was no other green space with it. It was the size of the building. So as Marcos was presenting to you folks at the senior center, that it now has those two or three parcels that are adjacent, that goes all the way now to the end. I chased them down in the parking lot in the snowstorm to say, hey, we're interested in this, and you might remember it was actually snowing that evening. So we had some informal conversations, and this would meet the second bit of feedback that the Department of Housing and Community Development had for us last November, where we are adding units. And we're also getting some national and state historic money for VOCES, so we could layer some more of that into this as well, which means we would have the highest of historic standards that we would do with the project. And we're trying to leverage all these pieces to bring together, so we come back with just a project that everybody will be proud of, that will really bring that building back to how it should have looked.
But it's $150,000.
Correct.
So what kind of time frame do you think to leverage the funds to actually move forward with this?
So the VOCES property is a 4% tax credit. It's not a 9% tax credit. So we're told those are less competitive. So the hope is we will apply in November. We've met the 2 conditions that they kicked us, or they didn't bring us in a year ago, 6 months ago, meaning we now have CPA money for the VOCES project, as well as potentially for this project if this goes the way we hope it will. And we have new units that I think are really phenomenal units to add to it. This isn't adding a duplex just to check a box. This is really a quality project. And what's interesting is the VOCES needs a lot of work, but it doesn't need a huge amount of work. So there's money left over that we could really divert more per door to this property than BOCES needs. So the way the caps work in the funding, it really lends itself nicely for this to only be a 4%. Whereas if this was with an adjacent property of similar condition, it would absolutely need to be a 9% plus, which is a 5-year wait time when it's all said and done. So I'm very excited with how all this fits together and how we're able to take this property in really short time, I hope, fingers crossed.
The reason I was asking, one of the reasons, is that I think this committee has, since we started discussing these things, been concerned about encumbering funds for long lengths of time.
Sure.
And obviously, if we know that you're on a short time frame and you'll either be using this or know that you can't in a reasonable time frame, that makes it easier for us to commit.
Mm-hmm.
How many people, excuse me. Sorry for interrupting.
So the next cycle won't be announced until the better part of a year from now, just so that's
So,
clear.
just so I
But we're
understand.
not talking 5 years. We're
No,
talking
no, no.
maybe 2 years.
I would think we would know within 12 to 16 months.
Not bad.
Sometimes they like to announce them in summer. I think Lyman Terrace, the governor came in the summertime
Yeah.
to announce that.
You would know about the tax credits or DHCD?
The tax credits.
Okay, and so when you said November is when you'd be submitting, is that the same time frame as for the other project?
Yes,
Because
it's
the
all
reason
one.
for the delay. Okay, so
Yes.
you'd be submitting the Chestnut Street
Correct.
stuff?
To DHCD. Now, there is the historical stuff, and those submissions are ongoing, and we've been awarded some of the historical money. They give it to you in dribs and drabs. You don't get the whole amount at one time. So I think we've been awarded somewhere around 300,000 to 500,000. But we're not there yet for what the BOCES was looking for.
So there's two sources, the tax credits and DHCD
Correct.
potentially?
Correct.
Okay. Which?
And the CPA, of course.
Right. Where would most of the funding come from if it all works out?
It's mostly DHCD.
Okay.
And how many people are going to be housed at 123? How many families or how many units?
We would propose 8 units.
A total of 8 units?
Yes.
And
Two
is,
bedroom? Are they?
So that's an interesting question.
Just had this conversation at the HRA.
No, I mean, have you, no, that's okay. If you
No.
don't have it, I was just throwing out.
I'm-
Sorry, Chair.
it's ridiculous.
Oh, it's okay.
I'm in the midst of a philosophical
You could at least put your-
negotiation
that's
with
okay.
our architect, because I believe they ought to be 3 bedrooms,
Okay.
and they believe they ought to be 2 bedrooms.
Okay, that's up to you. Okay, well, that's
So,
all
but
right.
when you walk through it, there's 3 rooms that have closets that I would say would make very nice bedrooms. So the layout, if any of you have been through it, there is one room that's off the kitchen. It's separate from the other living space. And I love the idea that that could be a multi-generational, grandmother lives off the kitchen, sort of away from the living space. It's really unique for rentals to have that sort of separation. So I'm excited about that idea, our architect not so much.
Yeah,
So,
that would be actually,
It works
you
for
see
you
them
though,
all the
right?
time.
You got that right.
Sitting back to the-
What's that?
Say that again?
What'd you say?
That's a maid's room, that's, those were middle-class apartments.
Oh, yeah.
You see that all the time on the Upper West Side in New York.
I know where I grew up, they had like that.
Yeah, but yeah, it
Well,
would
that was
make
probably,
great.
it was probably the pantry.
Yeah.
Actually, it was a maid's room.
It's a
At
good
least the one
size.
where I grew up.
It's
there
the
was
size of this room.
Literally, and I looked back at the 1940 census for the apartment. I'm talking about where I grew up, and it was actually where they had a maid.
I can't imagine a maid in
Not
an
on
apartment
Pine
block.
Street. My
Oh,
father
not
grew up
here,
in
no.
the right next door.
Wouldn't be.
I guess it was more.
There were no maids.
No maids.
The maids lived in there.
Yeah, but worked somewhere else.
But anyways,
Well, this is all great, sounds great to me anyways, and I'm just wondering, I'm trying to figure out how we can do the funding, because we're gonna start a new round of funding July 1st. So I'm not sure if we should, if it should be 2, and then we give you the 30, and would that, and then right after the first, we could give you if, you know, I'm just speaking for myself here, making suggestions, we could do the 120. Only because I'm not sure, I haven't seen the budget yet, and there are a couple of smaller projects that we're looking at, so, you know, I don't know how that would work for you, and if we should go, or is that a possibility for us to go that route? Would that be helpful to you? I mean,
That would be great as
Which
well.
would be the priority? Like the historic rehabilitation or the housing element? I mean, housing, there's more money.
I would probably say housing because there's
Yeah.
more money, but maybe that's not
Before we
the right answer.
down this road.
We're not making
Maybe
any
that's
decisions yet,
overly
we're just
simplistic.
talking, go ahead.
Well, yes, but this is a
maybe-
point that's relevant to this discussion, I think, which is as to timing. It is true that we will start a new calendar year July 1st, but if we stay on our cycle, we will not submit any applications that are developed then to the city council until the following spring. And if they're going to put in for funding in November,
Yeah, you're right about that, but we can do an emergency
Yeah, I just-
project anytime.
I don't see the benefit, but we can talk about that later. I just wanted to point out that we
Well,
need to get this done.
okay.
I have another question. So it would take about 12 to 16 months before you'd know about the tax credits, and then how long would it take before you'd find out from DHCD?
That's that.
What, the same amount of time?
No, that's what the
That is-
answer is.
that is the-
DHCD is the tax credits.
Oh, they're the same?
Yes.
Okay. I thought there were two different things.
There's the tax credits and then the historical.
So there are two tax credits, there are historic tax credits that are
Oh.
from.
Oh, right,
from-
yes, I'm sorry.
Historic-
From the Secretary of the Commonwealth.
Yes.
Mass Historical Commission gives out those in dribs and drabs, as you were saying. And then DHCD allocates tax credits for low-income housing.
Oh, so, and housing tax credits.
Yes.
And, okay, so it would take about 12 to 16 months to find out about all of that.
Correct.
So, but, yeah, the project can't happen unless that occurs, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
And historic tax credits, there are 3 rounds, traditionally there's three rounds per year. 2 of them are already passed. There's one more round in August.
Yeah, the one in August we'll get in.
There's another one in January or early February.
For the historic?
For
Yes.
historic, and then there's another one in April.
Correct.
So the one in April already, or actually,
Hasn't passed yet.
it hasn't
We're
passed
just-
yet, no.
We're just working on it.
I just
with
got
the
mine on
people.
another project, and okay, so there is one in April, but we probably won't meet that deadline.
Is the
We probably
housing
won't
one in
get this one
November?
in, but we will continue to apply the BOCES one.
But the DHCD one, there's just one a year.
Right.
So that's.
And that one's in
That's in
November?
August.
And that's in
That's the
November.
Okay, I got it now.
Oh, November. Okay.
So you need to have hoping the CPA money as your local
Correct.
source of funding to put it in an application that is due in November.
Correct.
So that's like the drop dead date for having that commitment if you're gonna, and
Correct.
check that box on the application.
Correct.
And what
Obviously,
about-
the sooner you have a commitment,
It
the
helps.
better. You don't have that contingency out there floating around.
And what about the historical? It's the one in August?
August, that's the
So
historic.
we continue to do those. We've
Okay.
done them for 2 years now, and we'll continue to apply for them. They give them to you in, $50,000, $70,000
So-
increments to build up to the 1.6 million that we're trying to get.
So if we turned in the 30 for that, for you now, that would help you
Yes.
in the August?
Do you need a local commitment?
You don't need a local
Oh,
for
you
that,
don't need
no,
that, okay.
no.
All right, Mike, you had a
You
question.
want to check that box in November that says you have.
Yes, we need to. That's what bounced us out.
You can't get the application won't go forward without it.
Correct.
All right, just to make sure we're
And
not
that's how
spending.
much? That's 120? I'm sorry. What's the minimum you need for that?
And however it works out, whatever's available.
Well, I mean, about 10 grand to cover it.
No,
I just think that maybe that's a
No,
way
it
to
would be the
kind
120.
of split the differences to say,
If we, it would be the 120.
give them something so you can put the
Yeah.
application in
So we
now,
don't-
and then we know we have another funding cycle coming up that gets you to
To get to the
bridge
150.
financing or whatever you want to refer to that as to get you there.
If you ended up only getting the housing funds, would you still, I'm sorry, Mike wanted
No,
to
that's okay.
I forgot.
No.
Would you would still, not do anything to jeopardize the historic elements.
No, because we're still going to apply for the national and state historic. So we're going to be held to the Park Service
Okay,
requirements as the national and the state. I forget
for the tax credits,
Mass
right?
Historical Commission.
Mass Historical
For the
Commission.
tax credits.
For the historic tax
Right.
credits.
Okay, that's good to know. Thanks.
Okay, Mike.
So before we go too much further with this, how much money do we have left?
Oh, okay, well, I can
we're talking about
show
spending
you,
that money,
I
how
did
much we
work
got.
this out, but Andrew
How much, what's?
didn't get to look at it, but, or here it is. Okay, so this is, if we were to do this breakdown that we're talking about, because I was in touch with Marco, so you can each take one and pass. Oh, sorry. Here, you can have this one.
Where's it from, this way?
No, they don't get one. They don't get one. There you go.
And I believe we have a photocopy here.
Thank goodness, now we might need
I
it.
didn't have time before I pushed that down. Taking a lot of space. And it doesn't work.
So again, everybody, please look this over because I didn't have the benefit of Andrew, although some of this was created with, I worked with Andrew on this in the past. But if you notice, like on the far right column, it says 120,000. That's the housing part of, that's the housing part of this project, 123 Pine, if it was approved. And then you can see the 30,000 under the historic column for this. And then if you look at the very bottom, you see 639,000, this, et cetera. This is the amount needed from the undesignated reserve to, that goes beyond what's in the 10% reserves to cover this. And then the next amount
So
is
to
the
cover,
amount remaining. What?
one question on that to cover the cost and the historic. To go to historic, we need that 600.
No, I'm talking about down here where it
Yes.
says 600.
Yes.
That's not about historic. That's
But-
the amount needed to cover all of these projects if you want to approve 120, if you want to recommend 123
Okay,
Pine Street.
including the open space.
Yeah, let me finish my full
Yeah,
sentence
well,
so you
I-
can get it. Okay, so this is the amount needed. You see all those negative amounts at the bottom?
Yes.
So that's like the extra amount that's needed to come out of the undesignated reserve.
Okay.
So that added together equals that 659,000 amount.
Okay.
And then this is what's left over of the undesignated reserve for any other projects or, just to reserve for, which would go into next year's, funding.
Oh, okay, that's good, that's a good job, yeah, that makes sense.
But again, as I said, I wish that Andrew had looked this over, but, you can also check the math for it. But it uses formulas. I checked it a few times on the calculator and.
Okay, so the total, this 968, 389 is those three? Those three? No.
Where's the 968?
It says total.
Oh, that's just for open space. That's, hold on, let me think. What is that amount?
I think it's these three here.
Okay.
260, the 537, and the 170.
I'm not sure what that amount is right now, but the main thing is you see how at the bottom of each column here above the line, it says 102,695. See, that's the amount in each of the reserves total. And so, yeah.
Okay.
So it's been subtracted, it shows how, the minus is showing how much it has to be taken from that extra reserve on the left.
Right.
I'm not sure what the 968 amount is right now.
968,389 is the sum of those three
Yes.
totals.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah, that's
that's
what I
why it
thought.
says total, okay?
Yes.
There we go.
That's
So in
what I thought.
short, if we fund the open project in total, we have 75,000 and change
Yeah.
left over for any other project.
Right.
Yes.
If we fund this project.
If we fund this for 120.
And as we know, the
Oh, for
Victory,
the whole? Oh, for the 100, okay.
the Victory project was approved. The Victory Theater was approved.
Yes.
All right, so, any other questions on the budget? Any other questions for Marcos or Steve about this project? Yes, Mike?
So this is not a question, this is a statement here
Yes,
to the
go ahead.
committee. One of the reasons that the Victory went through so quick and on the floor last night was everybody in the entire city council was very pleased with the work this committee had done on the stipulations.
That
That's
was-
Mimi.
It was Amy and Mimi, the two of them.
Mimi.
I mean, that, I mean, to me, that sealed the deal. Everybody there, wow, that's great, you've got all these in place, that's the kind of stuff we're looking for.
We can give
Kip
them
said his
the-
piece, and
We could give them those for the other ones they approved to if they
I
want.
mean, it was over in 5 minutes, right? I really was shocked. I thought
I was shocked too.
I didn't think I was gonna have to talk. I wasn't
No?
planning on talking. I
Oh,
was
you were
waiting.
there?
Yeah.
Oh, good,
Yeah.
I
sorry.
put him on the spot.
I didn't
Yeah,
realize
you
that.
did. I was expecting it was gonna go to committee, but I was just there just in case, and then they acted on it, and it was
Yeah.
like,
We
okay.
still need the Conservation Commission approval.
On Victory Theater.
Yeah. It's still in
Why
our,
is
it's still in our stipulations. It doesn't say historic, it still says
Conservation.
conservation.
Oh, no.
Oh, well, ministerial, we can fix
Well,
that.
there's water in the basement.
I penned it out.
Oh, that was a mistake in there.
Yeah.
I thought I
It
corrected.
could be tree frogs.
So,
As long as there aren't snakes.
so it's,
I don't know, I love snakes.
Okay.
No, I
All
love
right.
snakes, it's
Mike's
just.
done.
I don't want them trapped there.
Hello, Mike.
so if we're doing this and we put the same
Yeah.
thing, everybody pretty much understands, we're not putting any money out there. That you've got 100,000 and 150,000 here, 250,000 that could show up again back in at X date if the project doesn't go forward. That money isn't going to be spent or wasted.
It's the window.
That's the wind, look at the wind.
The wind, yeah.
Cell phone.
Yeah, so
It was like
that the
giant
money isn't
drone
going
or
to be
something.
wasted. There's not going to be a whole bunch of pointed bricks on a building that gets torn down, you know?
Right.
So,
Exactly.
all right.
Great.
Now, that's definitely the understanding, that
Yeah.
you won't spend the money until you have all the money for the project and it's gonna
Yeah,
start.
great.
But the only thing we need from you is the timeline for it, so that we can put that in the conditions
Okay.
when we do the contract with you, if this is, I'm jumping the gun a little bit too more, but just in case you need to.
Also, can you send me this as a PDF too? Okay, great. So I can share it with everyone.
Can you sign it?
Can I sign it?
Oh,
It's the last page of the
so obviously your board or planning board approved the plan, right?
I'm sorry?
The
planning
redevelopment.
board approved, or the
Redevelopment.
redevelopment.
The redevelopment authority selected
Okay.
VOC,
Okay,
yes.
yes.
How much is a redevelopment facility?
Yeah,
The property.
they probably would if they had some money,
The
they would
property,
do that.
aggregating the property, we're about to buy one of the parcels of private. It's a $10,000 acquisition. This is a $1,000 acquisition, so, you know, if you want to look at dollars and cents, $9,000.
No, you know what I was going to suggest is, if you get EDIC and HRA merged together, you'd have 2 million. That's what you-
Yes, I totally agree with that.
I'm gonna keep
That's-
thinking
that's,
I don't oppose it. It's just complex.
Edict doesn't do housing, at least they haven't done it. I don't know if they're gonna
They
start.
can't,
They
they
should.
can't.
No, not under their,
Just think
not
they
under
can
their
make it
current
illegal.
charter, right, yeah, correct. Okay,
Is that what you just said?
so, do you guys want, are you comfortable voting with them here, or would you like them to leave? I don't know what you want.
I think we should have a discussion
I'm happy
among
here.
Ourselves.
whatever. I don't know,
Yeah,
but
okay.
it is public though. You're right, it's a public meeting.
Yeah.
I think we'll be fine. What's happened in other municipalities is, the citizens are petitioning, which they're allowed to do, and they can file suit. So again, if Holyoke likes the project, we're really not gonna have a problem, but with any other liability issues, it's always just kind of up in the air of what's gonna happen going forward. So let's hope that nothing comes of any of these grants, but it's something to keep in the back of your mind when you're making the decisions to accept the proposals is what's the overall public good, and it sounds like you discussed it in length here, so I don't really have too many concerns about it. But if you ever have questions, you can certainly reach out to me. I don't know if you have specific questions for me, but
Is the structure of, I'm Mike Falsetti, I'm a volunteer here on the committee. The 3 sample contracts that we looked at, one was Falmouth, 2 of them were Falmouth, and one was for the city of West Springfield's
Right.
CPA. The West Springfield ones, to me, seem to be the most comprehensive. covering all the bases. Is your thought, what is your
My
thought?
thought is really to follow West Springfield. I know Falmouth had one for, I think, city-owned properties, and then it was one for just regular
Property.
generic projects.
Right.
I've actually received in my emails a couple more. So we have an attorney listserv, and I posed the question a while ago to see what people had for suggestions. So I mean, these were just some that I had gotten as a response. They're not necessarily what we are going to follow, but I really like the way West Springfield is structured.
Oh, I did too, that was real complete.
I know the attorney there, she's wonderful. I've also driven through West Springfield and you can see the signs out front that say, you know, this is spent with community preservation
Right.
funds. So I know that they've done a couple of projects. Actually, one of them was a church, so.
When you were talking a moment ago about a larger disbursement, were you talking about in terms of like Blue Tech Woods?
Like
the
I was thinking
acquisition?
Blue Tech for one, yeah, so I mean, that's a lot of money for them to front, to then be reimbursed, and I don't know if they have the funds to do that, so I don't know the specifics of the project.
Yeah.
So are you talking about Blue Tech?
Blue
Yes.
Tech.
Blue
So-
Tech, sorry.
So I think that if you have a purchase and sale, that's a positioning for an invoice, because that's the framework for how that deal was put together.
So
And no,
that's-
they do not have the funds to front it.
Yeah, so that's something we could think about putting into their contract, is that at this stage, we would give you X amount. You know, if your purchase and sale is signed,
They
here's
can
what
get
you
the
would get.
survey they can front and of course the monitoring fees, but just that purchase and sale is enough usually to be a supportive invoice.
Montec is done, Kestrel's done.
Yeah.
Acquisition.
Yes.
Just-
I think Andrew Smith, is he working on it with you? Chris?
Yeah, so I mean, Andrew and I talk about a couple of them here and there. Amy and I have been in touch with a couple of them. I'm not super involved in the minute details, but I mean, certainly as it goes on, it will be. But
So I did see an email today from Bob Spencer, who's the lawyer for Kestrel, and he's been working with the Glotech lawyer,
Okay.
so that they're trying to piece it all together. And then it would just go to a closing. At the closing, the I think it's 155 or close to that, would be paid out from the CPA funds, and then the back taxes would be paid by her lawyer back to the city.
and I think, I mean, as long as our contract is written out in such a way, I think we're fine.
Yes,
So
I agree.
it's just what the committee would like to happen, and you just put it in writing and monitor it as it goes. I know the city council had questioned, you know, who's gonna be looking after these to make sure the funds are being spent accordingly, and I think the invoice reimbursement is really, you know, did you spend it, here's your money.
Yeah.
So, I mean, however you all decide that process looks.
And is it your recommendation that with the conditions that there's stuff like, I know the city council brought up some kind of narrative or pictures, something like that? Or is that just a decision for the committee to make?
I'm not sure, I know what you're,
Like a quarterly report, that sort of a status report that has a description of the work that's been done and maybe even photos of it.
oh, so I mean, my suggestion would be, so similar to like how we do receiverships in the city, that might be something that we request of them, is what's your work to, you know, every benchmark that they're supposed to meet per their contract, can you give us a report, can you show us your progress, and maybe that's part of, you know, submit a report to council as part of the contract.
This is totally unnecessary. As far as a legal presentation or having, all the council is asking is the same thing as we asked before. At some point, Dave Bartley or some council is gonna, I want you to invite the committee in.
No, I wasn't asking about city council. I was saying what conditions, I was asking her about what kinds of conditions should be included in the contract in terms of quarterly reports. Usually the contract will say you must submit to the committee.
Thought I heard that the council.
Well, I mentioned that the city council raised that issue, and that made me think, sorry to confuse you, it made me think of the conditions that the committee needs to require.
So the contracts are gonna be signed by our legal department, which is you, and the committee.
I don't know if the contracts get signed by the committee, because I don't know that you have contract authority. It would have to go mayor and city solicitor, just like everything else.
Okay, that's what
You can
I-
certainly review them and we can amend them as far as conditions, but
Right.
the other,
Most of the projects are going to be reimbursed? And I would assume that it's to our benefit to be at the end, right? We don't want to do like these partial
No, that's
reimbursements.
usually how it's done though, like, because I've talked to, Office of Community Development, and they send an invoice, so I would have to check, did they really use the word for allowable, part of the scope of what the contract said, and then I would give them, disperse the funds for that specific amount
So
of work.
we would do progress billings, or we would just do one at the end?
No, it
just
would
asking
definitely
for
not be one
reports.
at the end, it would be based on invoices.
She's asking for us to pay just a report.
No, I'm not talking about the report now, we're talking about disbursements and
Let's talk
invoices.
about one specifically, like the Boys and Girls Club.
It's not gonna be one giant disbursement at the end, because we need to make sure that what they're spending it on for every project is really what they said they would spend it on. So say they planted trees or whatever, as an example with that, they would then send the invoice for that, and then I would say, oh yes, this is part of the contract, and then I would send the money. I would send them, have to make sure the check was dispersed. Because what you can end up having is some things that are not part of the contract that they shouldn't be reimbursed for, so you really have to do it every step of the way.
Well, why can't you just do it at the end? And
Well, I just said-
And just say, here's the 10 things they're sending of, Boys Club is $323,000.
Well, I think it would
Well, they
also
might not be
be,
able to
I
continue.
may not
think
be
it would
able
be
to.
hard for
That
them
would be
to
a
do
different
it.
answer.
Yeah, it would be
Yeah.
hard for them to cover the entire amount until the end.
I
They need
don't
to-
know that. Do you know that?
I do know that because I've had long discussions with Alicia Zoller at the Office of Community
No,
Development.
but what about
And
Eileen
she,
Kavanaugh?
let me just finish, she distributes the grants, and she has told me, and I've met with her staff on how they handle disbursements and invoices, just so that I could learn this process.
I'm just trying to make it simpler for this side of the equation, for the city, for whoever,
It's gonna be for
It's
Amy.
gonna be
For
me,
you, you're
it's
gonna
gonna be me that has to do this.
We don't have to, we're not
No,
gonna.
I'm not
Yeah.
worried about my work burden, I'm just
I
saying,
get what you're saying.
and overall,
I get where you're coming from. It sounds like you gotta kind of match the dollars to the letter. And I'm with you on that, but I get where he's coming from too. It's just trying to make it easier. But you're the one doing the work, and if you're okay with doing the work,
No, well,
but then you're,
It's just
is
that
there
is the
are there
Yeah, no.
10 checks that come out of, the treasurer's
If it's
office,
10
or is there
different- yeah.
one check?
If someone uses 10 companies in their project, then it's gonna be 10
Oh,
checks.
they're
Yeah.
gonna get paid,
They get
so
paid.
that's not really reimbursement then you're paying directly to the contractor.
no, you're not. It would be to them, to the, whoever's being the project manager, and then they would pay it.
So that's,
We're
I
not
don't wanna
paying,
beat a dead
they are
horse. It's
going
not
to hire,
important to
and
me.
they're going to pay their own contractors. The city doesn't do that.
Right, I understand. So then they get reimbursed. So are they gonna get 10 checks, or are they gonna
It
get
depends
1
on
or
the
2
project.
checks? That's what I'm saying.
Like, for Glowtech, it's,
One
one or
check.
maybe
Right,
3
right,
checks or
right.
whatever. For the Holyoke Boys and Girls Club, it'll probably be many checks.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, because
As
we have
each
to
one
monitor
is very-
compliance, and they don't have the funds to put out.
Yeah, exactly.
350.
Yeah,
whatever.
exactly.
We don't know that.
Well, we do, because when they presented to us, they made it very clear that the reason they wanted all of this funding.
So we're doing it as one motion with 30,
2 orders.
30 and,
not entered as, okay, let's see.
Okay.
What's it?
so any more discussion? All in favor, please raise your hand. 6. Okay, majority rules.
One opposed.
So it's 7 to 1?
Yeah, let's get it in the record.
Okay, thank you very much,
So-
gentlemen. So you,
Now get it
And
done.
this, so we're clear with the committee.
No problem. You can check that box,
Yes.
your November
Two separate
application.
orders.
yes.
Right.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Okay, thank you.
Stick around the copier.
Did you lose Krista?
Yeah, her stuff is still there.
Yeah,
They just
but-
stick that into the hallway.
Oh, okay, good.
Her and the other gentleman that came in.
Okay.
I'm Mr. Bartley.
Where
Make
did
sure
you
you
go?
get the wording
I think I see them there.
conditions right.
Well,
Because I'm batting 1,000 right now, I don't want you guys to mess up my batting.
No such thing as
we don't
I'm gonna give, I'm gonna give you the same notice I get on Housing Authority. I'll give you the meetings one day, I'll let you know one day after we have the meeting, so you can't speak against it.
Okay, all right. Sounds like a plan.
With a better term.
The only projects that qualify.
Thank you, Marcos.
Housing
Thank
have to be
Thank you, Steve. Ready to go? You left already?
Okay, that's fine, I can change my.
All right,
No, I'm not asking.
let's get this meeting back to order.
Nothing else. You can't money will build. No, don't tell me to be
Ladies.
quiet.
Madam Chairman, are you running this meeting or not?
Ladies and
You know,
gentlemen,
I'm-
ladies and gentlemen, okay, Amy, do you have something you want to say?
Well, I just really want to be treated with respect, and I've been told to be quiet and shushed by Michael City many times, and I really don't, I want to be treated with respect.
Please note what she's asking now. I will say that.
Well, no, I didn't ask for it.
Okay, no, I said what she's asking. Okay,
I didn't ask for anything.
okay. All right, so, we have, Crystal Barnes here, who's gonna talk to us about the agreements here. I don't know where she is.
I think the city council members needed her for something.
Oh, they
I think that's
did?
probably
Oh.
what Mr. Bartley needed.
Okay. See if she's, Marco, see if she's in the, oh, she's out there? Oh, tell her we don't want her to come in. Oh, she's talking to the city council. Okay. All right, let's accept the minutes. Let's go back to item 1 and accept the minutes for, and have a discussion.
And I brought minutes here, if you want to look them over. You can take one and pass it.
So I did read it.
Thank you. Great job as always. Yeah, thank you.
Would it be beneficial if I move over here so Crystal can sit in the seat that I'm in now?
Whatever you want to do is up to you.
Well, I just want to make sure that she can see everybody. And
There was a couple under discussion about the minutes.
if I'm gonna have to move.
Hello, everybody. Under discussion on the minutes, there was a couple things that I saw in there. Okay, you had mentioned let's see, where is it? Where is that? Is the last sentence in, on item 3, updates from Amy Landau, in the first paragraph, the last 2 sentences, it says, after the HRA, here's the proposal from HRA. Yeah, it should be from the, after HRA, here's the proposal from, it should be Valley Opportunity Council, VLC.
Where is this?
The last sentence in the first paragraph under item 3.
I made the change.
All right, and then, I thought I had brought it. Well, if you guys want to take a quick look, see if you can find it. I can't remember where it was now.
Sorry, you can sit down.
It's fine.
You don't want to sit.
No, I sit all day.
We're just going over the minutes real quick here.
Okay.
I can't find it now. It's fine.
I think the part at the top of the second page about Stuart Sagan, where saying it's important to maintain fidelity to that category. I mean, I know what you mean, but I don't think that's exactly what he was saying. It's hard to. That you more, I think it's about like not ignoring the historic significance of a project. For expedient purposes of funding, is what he was talking
Do you think the next line that is part of that gets at that or no? Where it says make sure that work done in the building and any funding to be continued on the exterior following the Department of the Interior guidelines?
Okay,
That was-
maybe if you
that was my
added,
attempt to capture
if you added for historic rehabilitation, just put in historic somewhere.
Yeah, that's what it did to me when I tried to close it.
I don't think you can close it, because then they can't get in here or something.
Okay. Okay, any other changes or editing to the minutes? So do I have a motion to accept them as amended? Second. Any more discussion? All in favor? Aye. Okay, we accepted those minutes. And Crystal Barnes is the city solicitor here for the city of Hoyoke, and she has we've kind of, she has to come and help us, so, but I appreciate your graciousness in being willing to do this for us, so come on in, if you want to sit down, have a seat.
No, I'm good. I don't want to stay too long.
Okay.
I know if the question's been posed, kind of what you all can do at this point to help us. I think what we'd be looking for now from the committee would be what kind of conditions you want to see as part of the contract. We have quite a few samples that we're going to kind of piecemeal together, but the main thing that should come from the committee is what conditions on all of these. The timelines you're looking for, as far as percentage of completion. I think their applications would be helpful in kind of guiding how those look. I know you've all decided the requirement is going to be invoices and then reimbursement. I know there's a question on some of the larger projects, would a business or a commitment, a building commitment or something count as an invoice? Because some of these projects, it sounds like, are going to be quite a bit of money up front. So, if they had a contract for work, is that sufficient to obtain their funds and then we monitor the work progress? But that's something for all of you to discuss, and it sounds like most of these projects are going to be kind of a case-by-case basis on what those contracts are going to look like, and certainly they'll be drafted and presented to all of you, and you can kind of make edits and changes. For the most part, I think a lot of the wording will be the same for the majority of the contract, and then like I said, there'll be a condition part of what's expected of them as far as the timeline looks. I don't know if you have specific questions. I did submit communication to the committee. There's been a lot of questions through municipalities about public funds for private entities. So I think as a committee, you should be prepared to defend your decisions as far as what's the public good for these projects. And if we can do that, I think we're going to be safe across the board. There's questions about the anti-aid amendment. We can't really do a complete ban on religious institutions, but you should certainly figure out, are we supporting the religion itself, or are we supporting the structure, the historicness of it? Is it a public good? So again, as long as you can kind of defend your decisions that it's good for the public's able to utilize it, and it's good for the city.
No, okay, I just want to
We're
make
gonna
it.
find out one way or the other.
Okay, so,
But I also.
is there any
mentioned
more discussion?
Crystal is also here though.
Well, she's here for the.
I know, and she has no chair, so.
It's okay. Well, as soon as we're done, I'm
Okay.
sure they won't stay any longer. Okay, I'm sure you'll leave after that, you're not gonna stay. Okay, so,
Well, I have
is there any
one
more discussion?
Yes, one more quick question, because it'll come up later if I don't ask it now. You've been in touch with Stuart Sagamore, and he is,
I have not. Amy.
He doesn't actually speak with applicants, that's not part of
Okay.
his scope, so.
just I've seen something that suggested maybe that might happen. But nothing has been raised that suggests that we can't do this,
Well,
now that it's a real project.
it's very complicated, but in his email, he was concerned about, there could be, people could be upset if we are skirting over the historic element, but he showed that if a separate application is for the housing aspect of the project, as well as, and also for the historic, then that,
So there's no
it seemed to
substantive
be
objection,
okay.
it's just informal.
So is
Yeah.
that what you did? You said you have two
Yeah, so
applications?
while I
Well-
didn't contact him directly, I saw the content of what he
Yeah,
suggested.
I shared it, yeah.
Okay.
And so we shared, the framework was that this could work, you know, if all the historic stuff is on the outside, you have historic for the outside and then housing for the inside.
And it's
So that's
okay.
how
I
we
mean,
structured it.
It's okay to do it
He
in
did,
one
well, he
application?
did say it would be best to do it as two separate applications, but I mean, I know that applications in general aren't even required for, it's nothing in the CPA legislation that says you even need an application, but that's sort of what communities do, so, I mean, that would be something to think about for next year if we want separate applications for every
Also,
Yeah.
this is best practice, because I would think we could vote to amend the application, or to allow the applicant to amend the application.
Well, I think,
So this is an amended application.
this is, all right, this is amended, but is it specific as to this part is the historic and then this, the rest of it is
preservation,
the
welcome.
housing, or are they intermixed?
Double
Because
duty.
I think I would want them separated
Yes,
out.
so in the budget, it
Yeah.
is separated out because that's the most important part for you to separate it and put in your, you know, in your columns. The story is the same, so that's why I went for one application. So when it says describe the project, whether we're putting it in two applications or not, it's gonna be the same description.
Well, if we agree tonight, we could leave it one application, I could put it in as two separate orders. I think, right, 30,000 for
that's what you
historic.
did for Chestnut Street.
No, I did
No, I just,
we did two separate properties then.
you
Yeah,
did two
see,
separate
it
orders.
says it right here, 30,000 for the historic
Right.
and then 120 for the housing.
So it was two separate orders.
So yeah, it would be two separate orders, yes, and is that okay?
Not with me.
I think so.
Okay, but,
But it has
so
to
it
be
is.
voted on first.
Yeah, oh, yes.
I said
I'll make a motion to approve the funding of the 123 Pine Street application.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any other further discussion?
Yeah, Madam Chairman, I'm going to vote against it, both for the amount of money that it's going to take out of our budget, and also for that amount of money, it's not serving really the greater needs of Hoyoke, much like, and I'm using this by way of an example, Blue Tech or the Hoyoke Boys Club, as projects that that truly benefit the entire city, that the taxpayers whose money we're spending was really intended to do. I think from one project for 8 apartments, to have someone's tax dollars just go for that as opposed to one that would help out the city in a greater sense than just one building. That's why I'm a little hesitant about it, and that's why I'm not going to vote for it. That's just my own thoughts on it.
If I could just, maybe help you to change your mind. I mean, to me, bringing that building back to being used is fantastic for the city, because we
If
don't have
apartment
that.
development-
That's not happening anywhere.
No, and I understand
Yeah.
that, but I'm a little concerned with the amount of money, the nature of the source of our wealth is that it was voted upon people's property taxes to improve the city as a whole, and by way of park and rec, or by way of parks, or the Boys Club activities, or any other activities that support and make the quality of life of the city better in a more expansive sense. That's what I think, my understanding of this tax that we're asking, whose money was people who's spending their money. I think that's what they had more in mind than another housing project. We've got enough housing projects going in the city, and we've got enough nonprofits going in the city doing housing projects. What we need more of is more things that are projects that are more expansive to the general public of the city of Hoyoke. And the taxpayers that are paying for this, they're not going to benefit by this by definition. And again, I'm using it by way of a model is the Hoyoke Boys Club or Blue Tech, where the body politic, or the body of the city of the citizens are all can partake of that to various extents. This is not the case for this project.
Okay.
So-
Answer that?
Well, you can, it's not gonna change my mind,
Yeah,
but go
so
ahead.
we don't have to,
This
if
is
you're,
just to get the
you don't have
counter-
to change his mind. If that's
Yeah,
the way
no,
he
this
wants
is-
to go, that's
of
fine.
course.
We can
But it's
just,
still
But I
helpful
feel
for
that the
other
counter
people.
argument should go on record is all. And
Okay.
I think, to me at least, the counter argument is that one of the things that this fund is supposed to do, as you say, is benefit the entire city. This is a monumental building that will crumble and probably have to be demolished if something isn't done to bring it back. Placemaking and just the aesthetics of the kinds of buildings we have on our streets and not having them fall apart is actually, and there are studies all over the country that tend to demonstrate this, an economic benefit to everybody.
Not for one building, no, I don't buy it.
You may not buy it, but I think there is authority for it.
I don't want to belabor this whole point.
I
I think
also
that,
think that
yeah.
there, it can be argued that affordable housing benefits the city, and there are many people who have, discussed those.
Will you be paying taxes on that building? You pay
Yes.
taxes on your other
We
one.
pay taxes on every
So
Hoyok
that's a-
building we
that's a
own,
clue.
assessed
And we
value.
won't have to pay to tear it down, which would come out of our taxpayer money.
I mean, I guess the only thing I would say, is I kind of agree a little bit to a certain extent what Mr. Falsetti says in regards to like the whole community and the other part, but with the whole facade and the historic aspect, I agree with that part too, like, because it still falls in line with the application, like, if most of the stuff still falls in line with the application, I can't tell you no, right? It doesn't make any sense to me then. But I hear what Mr. Falsetti's saying too at the same time. So for me, like, now it puts me in a situation where it's like, I don't know if I want to vote yes off the rip. Now I would have to think about it. I would approve the 30,000,
Are we
like
have
no
to
problem.
think about it right now? We're voting. We're voting right now.
That's how we do it out here?
Yes, we're
And
voting.
if I could just add, I mean,
You can abstain.
one of the
Right.
categories of the CPA is affordable housing. I mean, that's,
Right, so
and it's mandated that we spend some. This is a lot, but it's, it isn't
At
as
least
if
10%.
It isn't as if CPA isn't anticipated to be used
And
for
actually, that's
Right.
20%.
I mean,
affordable
the
housing.
CPA plan does include housing, and yeah, as Kip is saying, I don't think it's mandated that money has to spend, but it has to be spent on
Well,
it. But
20%
the fact
is
is that
mandated.
what?
20% is mandated, we have to spend it on housing.
10%.
The 20,
No,
yes, we have
actually-
2 years already.
Oh, you're-
What I want to
20%.
say, is actually, you don't have to spend it, but it's going to
We don't have to,
accumulate
yes,
over
correct.
time, and then you're going to have a lot of money in the housing category, and why not this? I mean, you have to ask
It's a great
yourself,
project.
why would you dismiss this project, and what would make you choose another, is all I'm saying. Like, if you're against this, does it mean you're against all housing? Then that fund is going to grow and grow and grow. For what reason? It's just going to be money that's sitting there, not being spent on anything. So.
Exactly.
If that's your only definition of that type of housing. If there are, well,
That
we could
is
go on.
the definition
Well,
under
there are-
CPA.
well, yes,
Okay,
but I mean,
let's
there's
not
other
all
type
talk
of
at
housing.
once here, okay.
There's other type of housing that we could, it doesn't have to be affordable.
It does
I
have
think
to be
there was a motion.
affordable, that's the category.
Yes, I'm
It
trying
must
to
be
get to
affordable.
Are we gonna
it.
vote
We have a
on the
motion, we
motion?
have a second, we have, does any more discussion?
What's the motion again?
That-
To
To approve the,
$150,000 funding for
The
the
project.
123
The 123
Street.
For both
To
historic and
recommend
housing.
funding to the city council.
And the reason that we accelerated it was that they could not advance the 350,000 to get this work done.
Which project are you talking about?
Boys and Girls
Oh,
Club.
okay. Right,
Well,
exactly, they need the
that's-
money.
The reason we moved that quick on it was to try and get the park open in time for the summer camp.
yes,
That's why,
yes.
all right? So, think about what's going on there. There's probably, you're gonna get three, you're gonna get Mountain View, CMS, and ABC
Right.
landscapers. They're gonna pick a landscaper,
Right.
right? These landscapers do this all the time. They're gonna start the work.
Right.
They may need a down payment, and it's, here's our thing here's our contract, it calls for 50% down to start, mobilization fee, okay, there's a check. Upon completion, balance. It's done, signed off, it's done. They might, a piece of it might go to this landscaper, and the other side might go to an asphalt guy, What do we have to worry about? okay, if we get a bill that says for air conditioning, and we're building outside basketball courts, that might be suspicious. I think we're over engineering what's going on here.
I'm with you.
Okay.
I've got something I'd like to just kind of cross-reference. If a lot of these projects are going to require building permits and contractors and stuff like that, a lot of these projects would have a normal requisition process where the contractor has a requisition and it goes to the owner and the architect and they review it and they cross-reference it with field visits. Like, that to me is one way to check, because they won't requisition an amount unless the work was done. And you've got, you know, the contractor and the owner who review this and
Right,
agree.
you're not gonna pay the contractor
Right,
if the
so-
asphalt's.
But would we
Gotta
be
make
able
one of
to
it, yeah.
have access to what the architect or owner have, like get copies of the requisition where you can see,
Yeah,
oh, here's the
that's-
amount that went for the asphalt.
That's what
here's
they
the
do
amount.
with the invoice, and that's also should be in the contract, exactly what needs to be included in the invoice. Because many times, like when I spoke to Alicia, she said they would get some things, actually it was her staff, that were not part of the contract, that were in the invoice. So that's why they had to look through this and see, okay, what was paid? Oh no, we didn't agree for coffee and donuts for the contractors or whatever it is, you know, that wasn't part of the contract.
But who goes out to confirm that the work is done? Like, are you doing that? Are you gonna go to all these sites and look at the
Well,
mortar
you
and
guys
say?
all have a project you're supposed to oversee,
So
so.
we're.
One project, yeah, maybe you could go and help Amy.
That would be great if you
Help
did
Amy
that,
with
yeah,
that,
because
yeah.
I don't,
Yeah, and I don't mind doing that. I just also wanted to point out that there are other folks who are doing the same thing. They're making sure that that work is done. And the document that it's contained in is usually the requisition, which a lot of times is a standard AIA form, and it has line item by line item, you know, cost. Something is 50% done, they only pay 50% of it. So that, maybe that, I don't know if that's helpful. I don't know if that's helpful or not. You know, we'd have to request it from the owner or the contractor, the owner, I guess, the applicant who's,
Yeah.
so there are a couple mechanisms out there that
yeah, I
might
think
help
it's
us.
important to specify what they need to include in the invoice, definitely. And
Yeah,
that could go
and
in the
that you
contract.
could help us with that.
Sure, I certainly
Yeah,
could. I
could
didn't
you?
know if those requisitions are part of what we're requesting. Because a requisition is a positive way to know that the money, that the contractor has requested payment for a portion of the work done.
Yeah.
That portion of the work done is usually confirmed by an architect who does field visits and says, yep, looks like you've done about half of that, you know, whatever the repointing is, or yep, you've installed half of the doors, or
Yeah.
you know, that somebody else does that work.
I did meet with the person who does the accounting for Alicia Zoller, I forget her name, what's her name, Zelda?
I'm not sure if it was
Anyway,
that.
I took careful notes, which I don't have with me, but I'd love to look back at them and get in touch with you. And
That's just a
we
document
should
that
talk
may be
about that,
helpful.
and it would be great if you'd be willing to help work on these contracts.
Sure.
Okay, very good.
I mean, I think I want to be clear, like, the committee should be looking at conditions on the contract, but the contract itself will get drafted in the law department. I don't want to waste admin funds on you guys doing outside of your scope. I mean, we have contracts that are easy to manipulate. I think the committee should be looking at your conditions, your timelines, and then we'll kind of handle the rest. There's also restrictions that we've talked about, you know, if you want to put restrictions going forward on those, that's something you should talk about. But again, we've done restrictions in the city, that's not really an issue either. And I don't want you all to get too bogged down with worrying about those too much as well, but if we're looking at a 5-year restriction, a 3-year restriction, are we looking at mandating open houses so that the public can benefit from, you know, what's being done? Are we looking at mandatory open to the public, things of that nature,
So I just passed out something that is relevant to what you're talking about. This is just an example, and I realize it's going to take me a while to go through every single application and lay this out, and we are going to have other meetings, but this is two-sided, and I just wanted to, I thought it'd be good while you're here, Crystal, that you can share your
Yeah, I think
thoughts.
this is great, and this is an easy way for us to draft a contract out of this, because you've got your deadlines for each phase, and then we can manipulate that language into something that looks like a contract.
I mean, this hasn't been determined yet by the committee, this is just
A sample.
from what I've looked at in the application, and
And they're not all going to be this difficult. I mean, you're talking about when they're replacing lanterns, it's going to be a quick, like, lanterns are done, move on.
there's going to be some that will be more difficult
Right.
because they were
Yeah.
kind of vague about what they're doing.
So if it's something simple, I mean, this spreadsheet might be a little much. It might just be completion.
Good job.
But I also made this so that we can even, if there's time, talk about this specific project to work out some of the question marks of the conditions, and I can work on this for the other projects.
Okay.
Although I only have 100 hours left until July 1st, so.
Well, you're taking 2 weeks off, so how many weeks is
No,
that?
I'm taking 1 week off, and that's in June, the first week of June.
Okay, so you said it was 2. Okay, so,
There's
so how
3
many-
months, really.
So that's, say, 11 weeks divided by 100. If you want to work so many weeks, spread it out.
Well,
Actually, no,
it's
this
hard
week-
to spread it out because sometimes there's more work. Like right now, there's so much work to be done. You know what I mean? It's
Well, take
really,
your time.
there's a lot of work to be done.
Yeah, there is, but, you know, you don't have to do all of these in 1 week. You can do, you know, this is the last stage.
I know, but the more
You know?
important thing is not going over the number of hours. Like it could be a
Right.
clump of many hours in 1 week and then no hours the next week. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
As long as
It's up to you, however you want to do it.
Right.
12 weeks left, so that's roughly 8 hours, 8.3 hours per week.
All right, well, any other questions for
So
Crystal?
will you need us to work out the conditions for everything and then let you know? That's basically.
Yeah, I mean, you can even send me just the spreadsheet and I can always present it to some, you know, show up at a meeting and be like, can I have more clarification on this, and that?
And I just passed around the different contracts that you shared. So is that something that committee should agree on? Which
No, the law department will draft the contract. You guys should just focus on the conditions. So as much as you've received samples, I don't know what
We
the
don't
actual
have to do
contract's
anything
gonna look
more.
like yet.
Yeah, okay, let them handle it.
And-
Yes.
Okay, well, I thought that you sent them to me to share, so.
No, you can certainly share them. I
No,
mean,
we
that's,
should
it's a
know.
baseline of
Yeah.
what, you know, the idea that we have. But
Right.
as far as drafting a contract, that shouldn't be something that the committee's
Oh,
concerned
no,
about.
I don't mean that we
we're-
would draft it. I just meant that,
We're not gonna take a vote to approve the contract, right? I mean, that's,
Right.
I think it's out of our hands.
It is.
Right.
It is.
You know,
It is, but the only thing
We
is
just
we will,
suggest what goes into it.
exactly,
Yeah.
and we'll make sure that when she
Right.
gives us a draft of it, that everything's in there that we want. We don't have to vote on it, but if there's anything you want to change,
right,
just
we'll
let
get
her
a
know.
draft of each
But,
contract.
you know,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay,
full send
anything else? Okay.
Thank you.
You're
Thank you
very
very
welcome.
much,
Thank you.
Crystal.
Good
Thank
job,
you,
Sylvia.
yes.
Good job.
Thank you.
Okay, under the treasurer's report, I just want to say thank you, Amy, for doing that, putting that,
You're welcome.
that spreadsheet together. So what I would like is if you would check with Andrew, you know that.
I did, I already sent it to him.
Okay,
Yeah.
but he didn't get back to you.
Well, he said he couldn't make, Wednesdays are never good for him, so I thought that you would have been in touch with him since you had him on today's agenda.
I know, I just was hoping. I was hoping.
Okay,
was
he
coming.
can never do Wednesdays, I
Okay,
don't think.
all right, so here's the thing, but he hasn't approved what you gave us tonight. He has not said that that's exactly.
I mean, it was based on something we worked on together, so
Okay.
it should all be correct. It's just
Okay.
that he would just, check on a calculator the last few things I had on there.
Okay,
you know.
so I just want for him to get back to us and let us know
Right.
if he's okay with that. And if he is, that's our treasurer's
Maybe it might
report.
help if you emailed him and CC'd me to kind of,
Yeah,
remind him
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Okay, I will do that. Okay, so I just wanted to clarify the treasurer's report,
Yeah.
and how it's going to, yes,
One
you have a
question
question?
first.
Yes.
Yeah, so like, I understand you can't make it on Wednesday, but is this the same paper you gave us last time, or you?
No,
Are
this
you the
is-
one adjusting it yourself?
I did that myself.
So
Well,
he can't adjust it, like, he can't actually do
Yes,
any
he
work?
can. Yes,
what do
he
you
can.
mean?
So I understand he can't make it Wednesdays, I understand that.
Uh-huh.
But you are coming not fully prepared, right, to the meeting because.
I would say I'm very prepared.
No, I mean, in regards to this,
No.
everything else,
In
yeah,
other
you're.
words, it hasn't been
Yeah.
okayed by Andrew,
Right.
that's all.
So what
because
I'm
he's
saying is
been
the
on
last
bill.
time I saw you, you're the only one that worked on this paper.
Yeah, I
Not
worked
him.
on that today.
Right. So.
Well, let me explain that a lot of this, like these
Yeah,
amounts,
you did.
the undesignated,
Right.
he did, I worked on him,
Yes,
worked
he's
with
done
him
work.
weeks ago
He
on,
knows what's going on.
on this amount, for example. We know that is the amount that's in the undesignated reserve, okay?
I understand.
He
so
created, we
I
worked
guess
on these formulas together, but right, he has to look at it,
So
you
the
know,
part that's
again.
difficult for me to understand is you said weeks ago, right? So like, if you email him a phone call, somebody, I don't have to be here, but if
I
you-
emailed him today.
Right, so if you email him today, next time we meet, there should be at least something in stone that says he reviewed it.
Yes, that's
he
what I
did
was,
it,
that's what
he
I was
did all this
getting
other
to.
stuff, like,
That's what we were just saying.
Yeah,
okay, but what I'm saying is that we don't have it this week.
no,
Right.
That's what I'm saying.
yes, you're right.
We spoke about that last week, and you said we didn't want to vote on anything because he hadn't seen it or whatnot. Right now, it's another week later, and he still hasn't seen it, or
Right.
he still hasn't reviewed or anything.
Right, so I had to jump in there and do what I
And I
could, yeah.
thank you for that.
You're
And
welcome.
The part where I'm coming at is, for the next time, will he?
I don't know.
So that's a problem.
No,
It is a
no,
problem.
That's a problem.
eventually he has to be,
It is a problem, and I don't know how to.
yeah.
That's-
eventually-
And that's not on you,
He's
that's
got
not on
like
you.
2
That's not on
jobs
you.
right now. He works for the VA. He's like the head of the VA or something. He's
So,
really busy.
so this is,
Eventually
if
he
you
does.
feel like I was trying to say that,
No, I
that's not
understand.
towards you, I
It's just-
apologize if that's the case. It's just that, I don't know, in my scope of work or any job I've ever had, if somebody holds me accountable for a job that I have, they're gonna follow up, and if I don't follow up, it's an issue.
Eventually he has to put his stamp of approval on this and give us, you know, his okay.
Yeah, I was
on
even
this.
hoping he would
Yeah.
look at it before this meeting, but
Right.
no luck.
Right, and the thing about Andrew is, I'm not sure his term is up, so June 30th.
And he wants to leave, I think. Well, he would like to help on the sidelines, like,
Well, okay, that's fine.
after
But
hours.
and I asked him if he is going to not ask to be, reinstated, that he give us an idea of who might be good, good in math that can carry on his.
I did ask my CPA.
Oh, okay,
and
you were
she's-
gonna check
She's a
that.
Holyoke girl. She's willing to listen to what the job is and perhaps help us out.
Okay, well, here's the thing, it's the city council who's going to
Right.
reappoint him. So the city council needs to go, if Andrew's not coming back, then the city council needs to advertise for that position.
Even if
And
he
they're
is
going to choose, if he wants to come back, then that's a
Then he
different
can,
story.
yeah.
Then all you have to do is, like you did for Kip, just reappoint him when the time comes. But, or you could still advertise and get someone
Still
else.
advertise and
You can do, it's the city council's
council
decision,
between-
though, it's the point I'm
So I
trying to
just
make.
need to know by then.
So,
She said
that's,
she's trying to.
so you'll need to maybe bring that up to the committee, that they're gonna have to, either, and as soon as we find out what Andrew wants to do for sure,
Right.
which I've asked him, to
Yeah.
answer me on that, and he hasn't.
Because one of the things he had said to me was that he could just meet with me alone on Tuesday afternoons and I would share it, but that didn't work out.
He has
He
to come
actually
to the meetings.
wasn't able to, no, but I mean that even if he were, yeah, I know we still need somebody to be treasurer on the
Yes,
meeting.
yes.
But he still wanted to help, but he hasn't even been able to do that outside of the meeting hours, so that's.
even, his term is up. Even if he wants to come back, we have to advertise to see if somebody else wants to apply for it.
Well, he didn't do that for Kip. But that's okay.
Oh, that's true.
We wanted Kip.
Technically,
And then next year it's
technically
gonna
it
be my turn, so. And I'm not coming back, so you can start putting out the advertisements for that one now. Okay,
You might change your mind.
oh, I don't think so. I'm gonna be 78 by then, no, 77.
Oh, yo,
No,
that's the new
enough.
60.
That's,
Okay, guys. are we
okay,
done?
so anyways, is
I
there
thought-
anything else?
Are we
Yes.
going to talk at all about this project and what conditions we want for it? Because,
Do you wanna finalize that tonight, or do you
well,
want
it's
people
just,
to take
we're
it
gonna have
home
to do that at
and
some
look at
point,
it?
for all the projects, so.
Yes.
When's the next meeting?
We didn't
We didn't
decide yet.
decide,
You
I
wanna-
have a personal request that I at least can't attend a meeting that's next week.
No, I can't
would
either next
like
week.
to gap a week if we
Yeah, I was gonna
can.
say.
I go back to work from my maternity leave next week, and I just know it's gonna be a crazy week, so.
Well, I need,
I am in New York City the week of the 16th, 17th.
if we can bang through the terms and conditions on 123 Pine Street, just so I know what not the final contract, is what I'm gonna.
No, well, you'll have to do the same thing that you did for
Oh,
the
how soon
theater.
would you need that?
I need that, I can't read the calendar from here, but,
Is it the 23rd?
Oh, you just need the
the
date?
next council meeting is the 23rd, so I'll need it by
The Friday before.
the Friday before,
The 19th.
the
Yep.
19th.
Friday the 19th is, yeah.
Mimi, will you be able to work with me on that?
I will be able to work with you. I obviously need to get up to speed about what exactly they're doing. I don't think this is going to be a complicated one to do.
Yeah, I'll make sure that the PDF of this is available to
It seems to
everybody.
be almost a duplication of
What they can.
Victory Theater.
Yeah, this is less tough than the Victory because I think that the conditions are more likely to be easily fulfilled. But yeah, it's basically the same set of conditions.
Yeah.
And we can certainly bang those out, unless there's anything people feel like we need to add at this point.
To me, the important thing is that there's no money being put out unless they raise the rest of the funds, you know? That's, to me, that's the important thing. All this other stuff, the facade work, this facade work, this facade work, you're doing pointing. You know, the interior work, our 120,000 is a very small piece of the pie of what they've got to do in there.
About
One
1/10.
really, really nice apartment.
Yeah, it's 1/10 of the.
Yeah.
the
With a
amount.
maid's
Half for one. Yeah, the maid's office, there you go.
Okay, so, in order maybe to accommodate, Andrew, I'd like to, do you guys, are you concerned about meeting the week of, Easter? The week before, Easter Sunday, and when is your Jewish holiday?
I have no idea when it is because I'm not terribly observant, but I am still in New York the week of the 15th, 16th.
Okay, so do you want to wait till the week after Easter to meet next, either on a
Hey, Kevin.
Tuesday?
Hey everybody, how we going? Good, all's well?
Either on a Tuesday, Monday, Tuesday, or Thursday night, the week after Easter. It would be the 22nd, 23rd, or 24th.
I should not book a Tuesday.
Well, I
because
can't
of the
meet
likelihood
Mondays.
of the planning board meeting.
And I can't meet Thursday.
Oh,
Okay, so how about the 23rd?
Oh, the 23rd, the week before?
The
Yeah, that
23rd
would
is
work.
a city council seat.
But we could go to the 4th, oh,
That's a Tuesday.
Well, we'll have to meet up in the other.
we could meet in the annex.
We'll meet in the annex, it doesn't matter if it's city council.
We could solve it right now, I think.
What?
Let's just use the exact same terms and conditions as we use for the Victory Theater. We've got that one magic line at the bottom that says, and other phrases may be deemed by legal counsel.
Yeah, but we're not meeting just for that, I mean.
Yeah, we have a
No,
lot to
I
do.
know, but
yeah, no, I
it's
think,
obvious we're heading towards not having
Trying
a
to get it
meeting
before the next city council
for the
meeting.
next city council.
yeah, but I think we have.
No, we don't have to meet
discussed
before
that.
Yeah,
We
we're
should get
they can do
we
it.
can get to that line
You'll get
without
that
meeting.
tonight.
Okay, we don't have to have a vote to approve.
No, no, no.
Right, okay.
So I just,
We
so
leave it in
I'm not,
Amy's and Mimi's good hands.
So the 23rd?
But I'm looking at the 23rd for our next meeting, April 23rd.
okay, so I'm not back until the 29th, so I'm out for April, but if you have a quorum, I'm good.
No, April 23rd is a Tuesday, and I cannot commit to Tuesday nights until I know when the planning board is meeting that night.
And that will be the city council.
So that's, yeah,
23rd
that's
is
those three out of 9
If
to
we meet the
6.
night before.
I can't meet Mondays.
She can, pretty soon you can though, right?
After May. Yeah, like starting May 6th,
Okay, so
Okay.
after the next meeting will be on a Monday. We'll go back to Monday nights, but this meeting can't be on a Monday. So we'll
I'm just
go,
vacationing.
let's go for the 23rd, and if,
but
not-
maybe you can't do it,
Yeah.
or you're not sure you can do it the 23rd.
she might be able to.
Well, I can do it the 23rd if and only if there is not a planning board meeting, and usually there is on alternate Thursdays.
Why not? You can't do it the 24th?
The same night as the city council meeting, and
Yes.
the planning board meets.
Planning board, well, the planning board
Oh,
actually usually
Andrew's not
meets,
gonna come.
they may have gotten out of
He
sync.
probably won't come on the.
Andrew's not
We
gonna
do
come in.
have a meeting on the 9th, but it's usually every other.
So then can we do the 24th?
I think we should be doing this because of the hope that Andrew can come. He's not gonna be able to come. I mean, it's rare, I mean, all right, I just think it's.
So
We
go with
need
the
to- We need
24th.
to have him come to a meeting.
Okay. But, all right,
and then he can skip the rest of his term, but I want him to come to the
Okay,
next
so you wanna make
meeting.
it tentatively the 23rd,
like
or
senior
just
year.
definitely?
We can only do tentatively until we get down to the 18th and 19th, because we have to post it, you know, so.
Okay, and you don't wanna do it Thursday, I don't remember what his schedule is. on
I'm
Thursday.
okay Thursday, but somebody
I thought you
said.
said you couldn't do
No, I can do Thursday.
that.
Oh,
Can do, yeah. I can do the 25th.
the 25th,
Yeah, 25th will work.
The 25th is better.
okay,
So
so
it's 6?
I'll say yeah.
25th at 6?
As you should.
Okay, it's going down in the book, this is it now.
Do we know where?
We don't know, but it probably, we should be able to use,
I don't,
on a
well,
Thursday night usually.
Thursday maybe, yeah.
Yeah.
I know that that week Joe's scheduled a finance committee meeting, I think there's a
Yeah.
DCR meeting.
His
full council
is,
meeting.
And is this meeting starting at 6 or 6:45?
6. Okay, so that's it, we're going with it. Oh, that's right. Andrew, can he make Thursdays?
I don't know.
Oh, okay, I thought, no, it's just
All we know is
Wednesday.
he can't make
He
Wednesday.
can't make Wednesday.
Okay, all right. Okay, any other
Yeah,
business?
there
Yes.
is, one project hasn't been voted on,
Oh, okay.
43 Canal Street. So, I don't know if we-
Oh, that's right, because, well, we started to vote for it, but we didn't know for sure if we had the funding.
Right.
Do we have the funding for
But
32,000?
we could wait until maybe we still need Andrew to, maybe everybody would feel more
Yeah, I
comfortable.
think that it makes sense to get our treasury report certified before we go to spending our money.
Yeah, okay, that's how we left it last time. Okay, any other business? I take a motion for adjournment.
Motion to adjourn.
All in favor? Aye, no discussion, thank you.
You're getting in trouble.
Is this our first meeting ever that we're leaving early?
I don't know, what time is it?
It might be.
8:15?